Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, and we have a great show for you guys today where it is July 1st, which marks the first day of the NHL calendar and the offseason. It's officially free agent time here in the NHL. And there was a whole host of free agents that have hit the market and that have actually signed with teams all today. Today was absolutely an insane one for news, so we're going to spend 3 segments today talking about free agents. The first one, segment 1, we'll be going over NHL free agency, just giving you a roundup of who signed, where they signed. That'll set us up for later, talking more in-depth about the teams and talking about who came away with the best ones. That'll be our 5th segment, winners and losers. Our second segment today, we will be talking about draft grades from the NHL draft that happened on Friday. We're going to do segment 2 will be our Eastern Conference grades. Segment 3 will be the Western Conference grades. And then in our 4th segment, we will be talking about the top UFAs after that remain on the board after day 1. But as always, guys, if you guys would love or if you guys would like to help support the show in more ways than you already do, use the tips and donations link at the GSMCpodcast.net. You can ask me a question using that link. It'll show up on the screen and it'll add a more interactive style here to the GSMC Hockey Podcast. But without further ado, we're going to get right into this because there is a lot to talk about. First segment today, NHL free agency, day 1 recap. I'm going to just start listing off names here and give very brief reactions to all of them. So we'll start with last night. Last night was the last day to re-sign UFAs, and then a bunch of RFAs did re-sign as well. So Max Domi, who is going to be entering the market, re-signed for a 4-year, $15 million deal with the Maple Leafs. That's about 3-point-something a year. Not a bad deal for the Maple Leafs that add the veteran forward in Max Domi, who has been 40, 50-point scorer. Good third-line guy right there. They also re-signed Timothy Liljegren. Utah Hockey Club, who was busy today, re-signed an RFA. The Ducks re-signed an RFA, and the Detroit Red Wing re-signed Patrick Kane to a 1-year, $4 million deal. Today or tonight, I didn't know really when this news broke, but I saw it this morning. Jake Guentzel Jake Guentzel signs with the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay Lightning acquired Jake Guentzel in a sign and trade with the Carolina Hurricanes. I believe they gave up a 3rd-round pick for it in 2025, and Jake Guentzel signed a 7-year, $63 million contract, making him a $9 million per year AAV. That is a steep one, but it's a good one for Jake Guentzel. You have Sam Reinhart re-signed with the Florida Panthers to an 8-year, $69 million deal. That was north of 8. I believe it was 8 something for Sam Reinhart, who is a fantastic two-way forward. Really proved his worth this year in a contract year. That's why he got such a big contract. But honestly, it's so worth it. I follow this guy on Twitter called JFresh. He posts a bunch of wars. If you guys are familiar with baseball, wins above replacement, and he uses it in percentiles. Sam Reinhart is in like the 100th percentile in expected value on defense, in the 90-something percentile in expected value on offense. Very great addition, or very great re-sign for the Florida Panthers with a name that was going to be the biggest name in free agency, but now the Florida Panthers can kind of run it back. Chris Tanev this morning signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Eric Johnson re-signed with the Flyers after playing 67 games for them. Connor McMichael re-signed with the Washington Capitals. Kasperi Kapanen re-signed with the St. Louis Blues. That's a good re-sign for the Blues. He is a valuable forward. Another big piece of news that hit very early in this morning, the Devils re-signing Brett Pesce to a 6-year, $33 million contract that comes out to about a 5.5 AAV for Brett Pesce. Fantastic blue liner going across the division to the New Jersey Devils is an interesting one to say the least. Next, it's Jordan Martinook going to the Carolina Hurricanes, signing a 3-year, $9.15 million deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. That is a very good forward. That is a very good forward signing for the Canes, who lost a lot of pieces in this free agency. So we'll see what they look like next season. With a lot of teams winning the day, I would say that we'll talk about it in the 5th segment, but they might be one of the losers there. Sam Lafferty, a 29-year-old forward, went to Buffalo on a 2x2 deal. Brandon Montour going from the Stanley Cup winning Florida Panthers all the way to the Seattle Kraken. He goes for a 7-year, $50 million deal, making that's about 7.1, somewhere around that 7.1, 7.2. Got to do quick maths here. But Brandon Montour, a valuable defenseman. He is a little bit on the older side, but for the Seattle Kraken, adding a valuable veteran defenseman is good for their blue line. I don't know how. I think the Kraken are a little bit far from being able to compete. That's what's a little bit worrisome with this deal. However, we'll see what it looks like at the end of it. He might be a buyout contract coming down the line. That's kind of what I'm really looking for. The Washington Capitals bolstered their blue line, adding Jacob Chychrun and Matt Roy. They traded for Jacob Chychrun with the Senators. That was a very great trade for the Capitals. And then they signed Matt Roy to a 7-year, $38.5 million deal. So that's about a 5.3 something deal, if I can do quick math here. So those are good acquisitions for the blue line for the Capitals. This team is doing a lot of interesting stuff, really going all in for next season. We'll see what it looks like for Ovi's. This really, to me, is seeming like they're building for Ovi's kind of last season. We'll see if these free agent signings and these acquisitions, they've added a lot of talent to that roster. So we'll see what it looks like next season. We'll be talking about that probably more in depth on Wednesday, talking about the Devils, the Capitals, and the Utah Hockey Club kind of going all in for next year. Next is the Chicago Blackhawks, who are focused on surrounding Connor Bedard with some more talent. They add Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen, Pat Maroon, Alec Martinez, and Craig Smith. So Alec Martinez, I don't like the deal. It's a 1x4. I think $4 million is a little bit steep, but it's only a 1 year, so you're not adding term. A lot of these teams are adding term to these contracts that they're giving out and getting less on the AAV for them. But I kind of like what the Blackhawks did here with Alec Martinez, but I do think $4 million for a 37, maybe 38-year-old defenseman might be a little bit steep. Tyler Bertuzzi is a good acquisition. Tyler Bertuzzi will help that top six a lot. Teuvo Teravainen, I think, was the steal of the day. I think everybody should have been looking for Teuvo Teravainen. He goes for 5 point something. I think that's an absolute steal. I would probably give him 7 if I was a GM. This is why I'm not a general manager. But Teuvo Teravainen, a 3x16.2, I think is a fantastic contract for the Chicago Blackhawks, and I think it'll age well. Pat Maroon to a 1x1.3. The veteran forward will help that bottom six out, and Craig Smith will also help the bottom six out for the Blackhawks. Eric Comrie re-signs with the Jets. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, after winning a Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers, he goes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, adding to the blue line of the Toronto Maple Leafs as they have been working on bolstering it. Now with Chris Tanev and OEL on there, it looks a little bit better. It's a 4x14 for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, which I think is very good. Tyler Toffoli going to the San Jose Sharks. That top six on San Jose looks very good now. The Predators. Now, this is the big moment here. The Predators went out today and absolutely won the day. I think everybody kind of has that same opinion. They get Steven Stamkos, which was the number one target on everybody's free agency board. He signs for a 4x32 million deal after the Tampa Bay Lightning offered him $3 million per year, signs an $8 million per year deal with the Nashville Predators, which is what he is worth. Jonathan Marchessault, 5x5, so $25 million total deal for Jonathan Marchessault. I think that is a fantastic contract for a Stanley Cup or a Conn Smythe winning forward there. And Brady Shea adding to the blue line. He's going to play fantastic with Roman Josi. I love that defensive pairing now for the Nashville Predators. Now they're adding to the already established forwards of that core. Philip Forsberg, Eli Tolvanen, and UC Saros is now getting built up because of these additions. I think the Predators are really going to contend in the West for a couple of years now, as they were the 8th seed. They were a playoff team. They add 3 All-Stars. That's huge. So the Predators form a new big three with some fantastic signings. And then for a split moment, I think that a lot of people believe that Elias Lindholm would add to that core in Nashville, but he ends up signing with Boston to a 7.5, I think. $54.25 million for Elias Lindholm over the next 7 years. The Bruins add a fantastic center in Elias Lindholm. We'll see how that contract ages, as he didn't have the best year in Vancouver, or he had a very good postseason in Vancouver. He didn't have a good regular season. So we'll see where he's at in his career. Ian Cole goes to the Utah Hockey Club for $3.1 million for only 1 year. David Perron, he signs a 2-year, $4 million contract with the Senators, 2x2. The Flames re-sign Yegor Sharangovich for 5 years, $28.75. Worst and best deal of the day. Question from Tim. Worst and best deal of the day. I think the worst deal... I don't like the Elias Lindholm deal for the Bruins. I think that is a little concerning. I think that the best deal is either Victor Arvidsson or Jeff Skinner going to the Edmonton Oilers. They got two fantastic forwards for very little. $4 million for Victor Arvidsson and three. I think it was 3 on the dot for Jeff Skinner. I love that. For the Edmonton Oilers, and their top 6 looks amazing now, and you can really afford to have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl split up. I think what we saw in the Stanley Cup final was those two having to play on one line, and that really hit their depth. So what they do is get fantastic depth pieces. I am a little bit concerned of Jeff Skinner's defense. I think that he might be one of the worst defensive forwards in all of the NHL, so we'll see how that works with Leon Draisaitl, who is already not the best defensive center in the NHL. So we'll see how that works, but I think it's fantastic for the Edmonton Oilers. Next up, Victor Arvidsson by a 2x8, so two-year deal, $4 million AAV. Anthony Mantha signs with the Calgary Flames. You have Jakub Slavin, 8-year deal, or an 8-year extension for the Carolina Hurricanes for Jakub Slavin, which is fantastic as well. Love the Teravainen deal. Like you mentioned, Skinner on a 1-year deal is good. Yeah, the Teravainen deal is fantastic. Like I said, I would probably give him $7 million per year. I think that guy is a fantastic forward, worked very well in Carolina. I think he's a point-per-game player, so him only getting $5 million is absolutely insane. That actually might be my best. That might be my best deal over the 2 Edmonton signings. I think Teravainen might be more of an impact signing. But down the line, not too many more to talk about. Jacob DeBrusk to the Vancouver Canucks is also a huge addition for that team, but I think the Canucks have lost more than they've gained, so I don't expect them repeating their success this season. You also have Sean Monahan going to the Columbus Blue Jackets by a 5-year, $5.25 deal. And Jonathan Drouin re-signing with the Avalanche. Matt Duchene re-signing with the Avalanche. Stefan Nesson re-signing with the Devils. Just a lot of re-signings down the line in the day. As the day wrapped up, not too many more contracts were thrown out. There's depth pieces all over the place getting re-signed here and there, but the big names, I believe we've talked about them all. That's where all of them ended up. In our 5th segment, we'll be talking more about what it looks like. So that'll wrap it up for our 1st segment. When I come back, we'll be talking about the draft here, as this is a busy part of the offseason, so we can't get into everything that I want to talk about today, but we'll go into the Eastern Conference draft grades right after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel. We're getting into our second segment of the night, talking about Eastern Conference draft grades. But before I get into that, if you guys have any, or if you guys want to support the GSMC Podcast Network in more ways than you already do just by commenting and being here, use the tips and donations link at the GSMCpodcast.net. It goes a long way to support the creators here at the GSMC Sports Network. And with that being said, we're going to get right into talking draft grades here. Eastern Conference is the first up, and we're going to get right into this because there is 16 teams to talk about. The Boston Bruins are the first one. We're going alphabetically by location, as that's the best way to do it in my head. So I have the Boston Bruins at a D+. They didn't have that many picks. They had 4 picks all draft, and their first pick was Dean Latorno, who I thought was a reach. He's a 6'7" center. He's not that skilled. You're getting him for his size, and I just don't know how many centers that are 6'7" have really turned out to be worth a first rounder in the NHL. So I have the Boston Bruins at a D+. I didn't love their draft, but they didn't have that many picks. I thought that there were better options at that 25th spot for the Boston Bruins. I thought E.J. Emery could have gone there. I think Ryder Ritchie could have gone there, but they get a D+ for that. The next up, Buffalo Sabres. I gave them a C. I like Constantinius for a late first rounder. I think 14th overall is a little bit of a reach. It makes sense that they traded back with the Sharks, I think it was, dropping from 11 to 14. I like that they traded back to get Constantinius, but I think that it still is a reach either way at 14. I had him at a late first round grade. And then down the board, I like Adam Kleber. I think that adds a lot of size to their blue line. But other than that, I don't think that there's really too much to talk about in this draft. So they just get a C. They just average. I mean, it's not a bad draft, but I think it's a little bit of a reach in the first round when I thought that there were better players available at 14th overall, and Adam Kleber is a good pick in the second round. Next up, it's the Carolina Hurricanes. B+ for Carolina. They had a good draft with what was really dealt to them. They didn't have a first round pick, and you'll see in my draft grades that teams without a first round pick, I didn't really give them over a B-, maybe a C for. However, the Carolina Hurricanes made the most of it. They had the 34th overall pick, which is only the third pick in the second round, or the second pick in the second round, and they get Dominic Badinka, who is a fantastic defenseman. I had a first round grade on him. I think that was a fantastic pick. And Nikita Artemonov was a fantastic left wing as well. That is a fast Russian prospect that played pretty well in the MHL this past season. And then Noel Franzen is a great defenseman as well. I really like the first 3 picks in their draft. And then down the board, they get a lot of guys, which in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th round, getting quantity over quality maybe is a good way to go about it, because you never know who can develop, who can grow, and who can surprise you. So I had the Canes at a B+. I really like their draft. Columbus coming in at an A-. They had a lot of offers for the 4th overall pick, and I think it would have been an A and an A+ if I didn't know that. They tried to get a Martin Necas deal done. I think they tried to do that on draft day, but they couldn't sign Martin Necas. He didn't want to go to Columbus, so unable to make that trade. Turned down a Chicago Blackhawks package that was a lot. But they stick and pick Caden Lindstrom, who is a fantastic center. He was my second forward on the board. I had him over Ivan Demidov, and he does go over Ivan Demidov. but I think that it adds sides to the blue line for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think now when you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets center core with Adam Fantilli, Cole Sillinger, Caden Lindstrom, you have Dmitry Voronkov, Sean Monahan. I think they're set for center for many years. They're big there. They're skilled players with Adam Fantilli and Sean Monahan. I think it is a fantastic addition with Caden Lindstrom. And then they really emphasize size in the rest of their draft. Going second round, Charlie Elick, one of the bigger defensemen on the board early in the second round, 6'4" defenseman from the Brandon Wheat Kings, who is still very quality. More of a defensive defenseman, though. Gets a undersized goalie in Evan Gardner, but I think that he was one of the best goalies in the dub last season. And then just down the board, getting 6'2", 6'4", 6'7" defenseman as well. I think it's a good draft from the Blue Jackets. They get an A-. I think it's an A if I didn't know about the Martin Necas fall-through deal, though. Next, on to the Detroit Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings got a B- from me. I gave them a B- because honestly, it's a good draft, but I think that it's just kind of an average draft. Totally agree with the Sens grade. Should have taken Byam. Good coverage on the draft. Thank you so much. And yeah, Ottawa Senators, I gave them an F. It's not a good draft from them. I'll skip ahead and talk about it. Carter Yakimchuk's a bad pick. I gave them an F. Kind of solely on that. They also didn't have that many picks to the top end of the draft. I didn't like Gabriel Eliasson either. It's a 6'7", defenseman, but I just don't see the skill in his game. He's not a great skater. I did a little bit of coverage on him, and I didn't like him too much. But Carter Yakimchuk, I had him, I think, around 20th overall. I think that's an entire reach. With Z Byam still on the board, with Sam Dickinson still on the board, going for Carter Yakimchuk, I think it's bad. So that's why I give the Senators an F. But going back up to where I was, I think I was at the Panthers. C- I give the Panthers. They don't have a pick until the second round. They get Linus Eriksson, who I think might end up being a little bit of a reach just because of his combine results. He was like top 10 in every combine category, which made him fly up boards, but I just don't like him too much as a prospect other than that. And then down the board, they don't really get too many pieces that move me all too much. Next, it is the Montreal Canadiens. They get A+. This is a fantastic draft. I mean, I think this might be the only A+ I gave out. I think maybe them and the Sharks I might have also given an A+ too. But Canadians get an A+. Ivan Demidov is skill-wise the best player in this draft. I don't know if you can really argue with that. I think he's more skillful than Macklin Celebrini or Caden Lindstrom as forwards. I think the other two add to the game in other ways than Demidov. I don't see him too well as a defensive forward, but I think he adds so much to a Montreal Canadiens core that you can really see what they're growing with Yorav Slavkovsky, especially since they gave him that big contract today. They really like this core going forward. It's young. I think it's talented with also David Reinbacher on the back end. They also get Michael Haig out of Chicago of the USHL, the Chicago Steel player. Fantastic player. I really like Michael Haig. He's going to Michigan this next season. I think that could end up being a big steal. He's so skilled. I saw a lot of him in the USHL. He looked fantastic. And they also get Atos Koivu, who I believe is Sako Koivu's son, I think it's Sako Koivu's son. That's a fantastic pick as well. And then just down the board, I think that they had a lot of picks that they could have gotten steals with as well, with 6'4" right wing Tyler Thorpe. That looks like it's going to be a fantastic power forward for them. So down the board, I think the Canadians did a good job. A+ for them. The New Jersey Devils are next up. I gave them an A-. I love Anton Silyev, and I think that might be the Senators also passed on Silyev also. They go Carter Yakimchuk with Silyev, Byam, and Sam Dickinson on the board still. That's awful. But anyways, I love Anton Silyev. That's a 6'7" defenseman that can skate very well, plays his body very well. I think he is going to be a fantastic defenseman in the NHL. Really, of that Zdeno Chara kind of feel to him. Not too much offensively, but has a very strong shot, and he is a fantastic defensive defenseman. And then down the board, I like Michael Yegorov. He was my number 1 goalie in the draft. Kasper Pikkarainen was also a fantastic right wing pick in the 3rd round. So the Devils get an A-. New York Islanders is the next team. They get a B. I think Cole Eiserman was a fantastic pick. But other than that, I don't think that they did too well. Jesse Pulkkinen wasn't too high up on my board, getting him in the 2nd round. And then Kamil Bednarik, I didn't do too much scouting on, as I kind of forgot to watch him when I was watching my USA National Team Development Program film or videos that I do watch. So I don't know too much on Kamil Bednarik, but the top 2 picks was good, and then so they end up with a B, which is a good grade. They had a good draft, but I don't know how much it pushes them in the direction they want to go into. I think the Islanders are going to be that going to be in the bottom tier of the Metro next season. I think it's going to be them, the Blue Jackets, and maybe it might just be them and the Blue Jackets, because I think the other 6 Metro teams are fantastic. But yeah, they get a B. The Rangers are the next team. They get a C+. EJ Emery was a fantastic pick, and I think it would have been, if they don't get EJ Emery, it's an F. They have only 3 other picks in the entire draft. They're late round picks. We don't know too much on them. So, but EJ Emery is a good pick. They end up with a C+ just because of that. But one guy does not make a draft. Philadelphia Flyers, they get a D- here. Jet Lushenko was an absolute reach. I think that Jet Lushenko should not have gone 13th overall. I think I had him at 28th, if I'm not mistaken. So I still had a 1st round grade on him, but not 13th overall, especially with other guys on the board that I like Michael Branstad-Gord, Konsta Helenius. I think I would have taken over Jet Lushenko, but we'll see how that pans out. The Flyers got Matvei Minchkov to an entry-level contract today, which their team is looking very good, so they didn't need a good draft, is kind of my point there. I think that this team's going to be fantastic, and Matvei Minchkov could really slot on their first line if they really need him to. He's that good. Moving on from the Flyers to the Pittsburgh Penguins, they get a C. They didn't have Tanner Howe, Harrison Brunick. They get a C. This is kind of just we'll see in a few years type of draft. They don't have a 1st round pick, so can't really put them higher than this. Just moving on quickly from the Pens, the Lightning get an F. The Lightning get an F because they have their 1st pick was in the 4th round. That's just solely why they got an F. I think that they could have gotten some good picks in the 4th and later. However, I just don't know, if I'm going to be quite honest here. Just haven't really seen the players too much. Next up, just going quickly through them, because I don't think that their draft will really move the needle for many years. Probably 4 or 5 years is when we'll really be able to tell on the Lightning's draft. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I gave them a C-. Their draft was the draft started at 31st overall with Ben Danford, which clearly was a guy that they really liked, but they didn't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I really like Sam McHugh in the 7th round. I saw a lot of him on the Owen Sound in the game I did watch of the Owen Sound, so I like Sam McHugh. I think I start him. He goes in the 7th round. That could be a steal, so they get a C-, because I don't know too much on Ben Danford, but I do like Sam McHugh but it's in the 7th round, so how much can that really move the needle? And then Washington Capitals get an A because of 2 picks that I had it in the top half of the draft. They get at 17th overall in Tarek Parasik, who is a fantastic winger from Prince George, and then Cole Hudson, who drops all the way down to 43rd. I had him in the 1st round. I think I had him 20 in the 1st round. I think Cole Hudson was a fantastic defenseman. He is 165 pounds, 5'11", so maybe a little bit undersized, but very skilled and very good skating. I think that that's going to be a fantastic pick for the Capitals, and we're going to look back on that as a little bit of a steal. But that'll wrap it up for this Eastern Conference draft grades. Those are the teams that I think did the best and the teams that I think did the worst. Next, we're going going to go on to the Western Conference side of things, talk about their drafts, give out grades, and after I come back from my second break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're on to our Western Conference draft grades here. We're going to start right off the bat with Anaheim Ducks getting a D+. Beckett Seneca was a reach. He even thought he was a reach. I mean, come on. He literally said, oh my god, what the... You can read lips. That was an easy one to read. He didn't think he was going to go third overall. Like, come on here. It's a D+ because of that. I think Stian Solberg was a good defenseman. I kind of like their draft a little bit. I think Beckett Seneca could be a good, useful piece in the NHL, but I mean, with the reaction and with just, I think that it is a reach. I can't get them over a D+ here for the Ducks. We'll see. I definitely will be proved wrong, if I'm going to be honest with you. I fully expect this one to be my worst take of the draft. With the reaction and with just, all of it that goes on with the Anaheim Ducks draft, I had to give them a D+. Although I do like Stian Solberg a lot. And I did like Beckett Seneca. Or Seneca, I think is how you pronounce that. It's just rough, though. But moving on to the Calgary Flames, they got a B- for me. I like Zane Parekh, but I didn't like Matt Gryden, who was their 28th overall pick in this draft. I think down the board they got a few good picks as well, Andrew Basha, but I don't think I could give them over a B- here. Luke Misa could be a good player, brother of future probably number 1 overall pick in Michael Misa next year. But we'll see how that really shapes out. I think he might be also a little bit undersized too. But Zane Parekh can be a fantastic defenseman. The Senators took Carter Yakimchuk with Zane Parekh on the board still too. Oh my goodness. Every time I look at the board, I get reminded at how awful that pick was. I like Carter Yakimchuk. I think that he'll be a fine defenseman, but I did have like 5 defensemen over him at the time that they took him. That's why it was such a bad pick. But nonetheless, we're gonna get back into the Western Conference side of things. Blackhawks next. I gave them a B+. Artem Levshunov I think is going to be a fantastic blue liner. I think that's a fantastic combination that they have with Kevin Korchinski now, and Sasha Boiver, who I think might be one of the more underrated prospects in this draft. Center from Muskegon, 6'2", 183. They get him at 18th overall. I think he was a very skilled forward as well. I really like that pick for Sasha Boiver, for the Blackhawks in Sasha Boiver. But, with the Artem Levshunov pick, I like it a lot in a vacuum, but at the time, you have Ivan Demidov that you could pair up with Connor Bedard in 2 years, and that's kind of what leads me to say B+ instead of an A draft here. But yeah, I do like their draft a lot. Next up is the Colorado Avalanche. They get a C here. They don't have a pick in the first round. As I said, this is it's a trend in this. In my draft grades, if you don't have a first round pick, I can't give you anything really higher than a C because this draft is not the best when it comes to the depth of it. You can't really get above a C, but I didn't hate Ilya Nabokov. I think that there were better goaltenders on the board at the time to take. And with your first pick in a draft being a goalie, I think might be a little bit of a reach there. But next up is the Dallas Stars. They got a D minus for me. I didn't like Emil Hemming, and then they don't have a pick until the 5th, and they only have 2 other picks besides their first round pick. It's a D minus. I don't like Emil Hemming. Going right past that because that draft wasn't really anything to talk about too much. Next up is the Edmonton Oilers. I do like Sam O'Reilly a lot out of the London Knights. The London Knights are my favorite team in the Canadian Hockey League. So might be a little bit biased, but I do like Sam O'Reilly a lot. Emil Vinny is a good goaltender out of Finland. But they get a C minus just because it's not a spectacular draft. They didn't do too much. They didn't do too much on draft day. The LA Kings ended up with a minus. I talked about the Montreal Canadiens getting my only A+. I did forget that I gave the Sharks an A++ because I wanted to separate them. I did say that I do think that the Sharks had the best draft, but we'll get into that later. I'm just now seeing that. But for the LA Kings, I gave them an A-, and honestly, I think I gave them an A- purely because of the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. That wasn't really on draft day, but I wanted to throw it into something. I gotta say how fantastic that trade is for the Kings, offloading the worst contract in the NHL for a valuable goaltender. I think it's a steal. But I also really like Liam Greentree when we're talking about their draft. I think I had him around like 17 or 18. He goes at 26th overall. So I think that is a fantastic pick. Next up from the Kings, it's the Minnesota Wild, who I think had the 3rd best draft on Friday. Z Byam at 12th overall is fantastic. That's going to be one of the steals of the draft. He was fantastic in the World Juniors. He was fantastic for Denver on their NCAA championship run. He should have gone top 5, honestly. He should have been that 3rd overall pick for the Ducks. But I think the Ducks just look at their defensive core and think the Ducks took Beckett Seneka over Ivan Demidov also. I didn't even mention that when I was talking about the Ducks. I'm all over the place right now, but that's awful. You can't take Beckett Seneka over Ivan Demidov. That's another reason I gave them a D+. I'm just now remembering. But anyways, Z Byam I thought should have gone 3rd overall to the Ducks. He drops all the way to 12th. He's like one of the last of the great defensemen in this draft to go off the board here. I think that's an absolute steal. And then they get Ryder Ritchie, who had a 1st round grade on. They get Aaron Kiviharju, who 2 years ago was a top 5 pick in this draft. He did have a knee injury, and then he is a defenseman, so we'll see. But that guy is a fantastic defenseman. I think he is going to be the steal of this draft. Aaron Kiviharju dropping all the way to 122nd overall. At that point, why not take a flyer out on the guy that is so skillful that we were talking about being second only to Macklin Celebrini in this draft at a point. Yeah, I really like Aaron Kiviharju. And so their first 3 picks were A+. They get an A+. Next up is the Nashville Predators, who get a D+. I really didn't like Egor, I think is how you pronounce his first name, Egor Surin, out of Russia. He played in the MHL. I don't like MHL prospects too much, but I still think that it won't be too bad. But they get a D+ because their draft was kind of uninspiring. Just kind of moving on from that, they get a D+ in their draft, but they're by far the winners of free agency. So really, who won here? Next up is the San Jose Sharks. All right, let's talk about this draft. This is one of the best drafts that I've seen in a long time. Like, truly, I think their first 6 picks were absolute hits. Macklin Celebrini, who is the best player in this draft, they get him at number 1 overall. Makes your job a little bit easier when you're drafting number 1 overall. We've seen that in the past with Connor Bedard, Juraj Slavkovsky, Owen Power. These number 1 overall picks are usually really good. Next up, Sam Dickinson, who had a very good grade on. He also is from London Knights, so I do like the London Knights of the CHL, so, take that with a grain of salt. Igor Chernyshov, I had a top 15 grade on. Leo Solin Wallenius, who is a defenseman out of Sweden, I had a first-round grade on as well. 4 guys in their top 4 picks I had first-round grades on. And then Carson Wetsch, I had a early second-round grade on. Christian Kirch, I had a late second-round grade on. They got him in the 4th round goalie out of the Swiss Junior League. This is the best draft I've seen in a while here for the San Jose Sharks. This is a franchise-altering draft. They were the bottom of the NHL this last year. I don't expect that to happen in the years to come. I think this is a fantastic draft from the San Jose Sharks. I can't emphasize that enough. Next, the Seattle Kraken. I gave them an A-. Berkeley Catton's a fantastic pick at 8th overall. I love Berkeley Catton's game. Also loved how Kivi Hardrew said to you guys, that clip is one of the best clips that I've seen on a draft night. Literally, an 18-year-old kid walking up to a GM in the 4th round and saying, "You got the steal of the draft." That's something that you can really, if you're the general manager, and later in that clip, when he sits back down at the table, he goes, "I love that kid already." That's how you make a first impression. That's a fantastic way to start a career in the NHL. Aaron Kivi Hardrew will be very good, and I am very confident on that. Berkeley Catton, though, going back to the Seattle Kraken, 8th overall. Julius Miettinen from Finland, I had a good grade on as well, a 6'3 center. If you're a 6'3 center, I usually grade you out well. I really like when centers are bigger. But I think it's just a good draft from the Kraken. They get an A- there. The St. Louis Blues are the next one up. I gave them a C-. I don't like Adam Jiricek, and I'll be the first one to admit that I don't like Adam Jiricek. I think that is a reach. He's coming off of an injury. I get that he's a defenseman, but he only had 1 point in his entire season this past year, and I think he played 20 games. 1 point in 20 games is a rough look. He's also 6'3", 165. Like, that's a skinny defenseman. I don't like Adam Jiricek too much, but the Blues really targeted defense in this draft, their first 3 picks being defensemen. Lucas Fischer isn't a bad one, but I don't like him too much. But Colin Ralph, I think, is just a size defenseman, 6'5", 226 pounds. I think that it could be a good draft for the Blues. They could prove me wrong, but I don't like Adam Jiricek at the 16th overall. Utah Hockey Club next. They get an A+. Tisha Ginla, Cole Boydoon, and Will Skahen, I believe that's how you pronounce that. I think that's a very good draft. Tisha Ginla, I think, will be a fantastic player, and just kind of, they get more of an A+ of the other things that they did on the draft night, other than their just draft. They got Mikhail Sergachev and John Marino, who they really wanted to target defense. They felt like that was lacking on this team, and I can't agree. And I think that they got 2 of the better defensemen on the trade block, with Mikhail Sergachev being a very young player still. That could end up being an absolute steal. Next up is the Vancouver Canucks. They get an F. I gave them an F because they didn't have a pick until the 3rd round, and then they didn't really do anything with that. They had they had the ability to get Aaron Kivi Hardrew in the 3rd and 4th round, and they don't. That's why they get an F. Just moving along from that, the Knights get a C-. Trevor Connolly is going to be he'll be an okay NHL player. I feel confident about that, but I don't have him really reaching anything higher than the 2nd line, honestly, on a serious team. And then they have 3 more picks in the draft. They don't really move me too much. That's why they get a C-. And in a moment where the Vegas Golden Knights might be in rebuild mode, I think that this draft is one that they really needed to have, and they don't have the picks for it. And then the last team is the Winnipeg Jets. They get a C because they only have 4 picks in the draft. I do like Kevin He, though. I think he'll be I think he'll be a serviceable left wing. I think he'll find his way to the NHL. But other than that, they don't really get anything that really moves me too much. They get a C, the Winnipeg Jets. So that'll wrap it up for the draft grades and talking NHL draft. When I come back from my 3rd break of the night, we're on to our 4th segment. We'll be talking about the biggest UFAs remaining on the board after day 1. Spoiler alert, there's not many.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're back with our fourth segment of the night, talking biggest remaining free agents on the board. There's like nobody. This is the first day in NHL history that $1 billion were spent on July 1st in a free agency period. Like, everybody's gone. It's like it's like looking at the room like, empty. So there are players left in free agency, but you're not going to get anybody that really moves the needle for a franchise. But there are serviceable players still out there. Cam Atkinson, I think, is the maybe not. I will get Adam Henrique is probably the best player still left on the board, but he is 34 years old, so I don't know how many teams want to take a shot at him. He played fantastic in the Stanley Cup final. You know, you can trust on him to get 2 goals in the Stanley Cup final. But I don't think that he really moves the needle for a lot of these franchises. And his price tag, probably coming off of a 50-point season, is a little bit inflated than you want it for a 34-year-old center. Jacob Vrana is another player that I think can move the needle, but coming off of a big injury, only playing 21 games in this past season, I don't know how many teams want to take a flyer out on him. I think that is a little bit worrisome if you are a GM. Tyler Johnson is still available, coming out of Chicago. Tyler Johnson had a bad season, minus 35. That's all you need to know for him. I don't know how many teams really want to take a chance on him. Vladimir Tarasenko, probably the biggest name left, I would say, in the free agency period here. The right winger from the Stanley Cup winning Florida Panthers has not gotten a contract yet. 55 points in 76 games played. I think Vladimir Tarasenko can absolutely be a valuable player for a team coming up for next season. So we'll see what that looks like We'll see if he does land himself somewhere. I think he absolutely is deserving of a contract, but who knows if he will get one sooner than later. Victor Olofsson, I'm just looking down the board here based off of their most recent contract, going from most to least. So you know what I'm looking at here. Next up, Victor Olofsson, a winger. 15 points in 51 games played. I don't know too many teams that are willing. He's coming off of a $5 million contract. I don't know too many teams that are willing to give him more than 2 for Victor Olofsson. So we'll see what that looks like as well. Tyson Barrie might be the best defenseman remaining on the board. Him, John Klingborg, who's coming off of a major injury, but John Klingborg can absolutely move a team in the right direction if he is back to his, himself. He is a fantastic player in his own right. So we'll see what that looks like for John Klingborg. Other big defensemen that are remaining on the board, Ryan Sutter, but he's 39 years old, so maybe going more into retirement than returning. Justin Schultz, another big name defenseman on the board, minus 23 last season though. Adam Bockfist, who got bought out by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Adam Bockfist getting bought out at a $2.6 million salary and an RFA is really telling for Adam Bockfist. Teams don't really want him. Kind of a big injury history. Had a lot of potential, Adam Bockfist did, but never really living up to it, and this kind of is what it looks like. Other big names. Alexander Barbanov is still on the board. Alex Goligoski, who might go into retirement, is still on the board. Max Pacioretty still on the board. I wouldn't doubt him going into retirement. Eric Brandstrom, defenseman. I believe he's 24 years old. I'm shocked that he didn't get a contract today. This kind of seems like a guy that would have. Only 20 points in 76 games played, but he's a defenseman. He was +5. I think he'll be a serviceable player for any team. Going more down the board, Kailer Yamamoto still available. Michael McLeod is still available, who's a good center on the penalty kill, but not too many other names. There are names like, Carter Hart's available, but he's not going to get a contract with everything that happened with him, and neither should he. But that's a topic for another show. We don't talk about that here on the GSMC Hockey Podcast. But there are a lot of RFAs still out to be signed. With everything, with all the buzz on the UFAs, we do kind of forget about the guys that kind of slipped through the crack. Lucas Raymond still doesn't have a contract for the Detroit Red Wings, them not being able to get anything done in the early parts of the offseason. I assume he'll be re-signed with the Detroit Red Wings. It's just, he's coming off of a fantastic year, 30 goals, 72 points. He might want around 8 from the Detroit Red Wings. He's 22 years old, fantastic prospect, only getting better. We'll see what that looks like for the Red Wings. The Carolina Hurricanes still need to sign Seth Jarvis. I assume that this mass exodus is to give a guy like Seth Jarvis some money. There's a lot of people leaving Carolina right now, so we'll see if they're able to re-sign Seth Jarvis and what that looks like. Vladimir Tarasenko is not an RFA. He's 32 years old. Quinn Byfield, an RFA from the LA Kings. He is a beast. Seider too. Yes, they do need to re-sign Seider as well for Detroit. Mo Seider had a bad year this past season to his standards. Only 42 points, a -7 for the defenseman. But the entire Red Wings team kind of underperformed, and I do expect that team to completely turn it around. They kind of, to me, seem like the best of the rest. I have my top contending teams in the Eastern Conference. With the likes of the Devils, somehow now the Capitals. I don't know how they got their name into the conversation, but the Panthers are up there. And then I think the Red Wings can start that next tier of kind of the Red Wings, the Rangers, the Lightning, I think is still going to be good next year. So I think the Red Wings will be fantastic. I like them getting Kane back, but we'll see what they do with their, pivotal prospects, because Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond will definitely be re-signed. And they also have Joe Veleno as an RFA as well. This offseason, love guys for them are coming up. But other teams, so Quinn Byfield, 55 points in 80 games played for the LA Kings on a pretty rough LA Kings team. He's going to get re-signed. He's a fantastic forward prospect. Kind of leading that rebuild in LA is Quinn Byfield. Next RFA, talk about Martin Necas, will be dealt at some point in this summer. I thought it was going to be today. It was not today. He's already turned... I think the problem is Martin Necas has like 5 teams in his mind that he's willing to go. I think he's already turned down contracts from like 4 or 5 different teams. So... we'll see what that looks like. I know for a fact he's turned down a contract from the Blue Jackets. I think there's another Metro team that he's turned down a contract from, and a couple of Central teams that he's turned down a contract from as well. So we'll see what that looks like for Martin Necas. But the guy is very selective, let me tell you that. But I mean, he holds the power right now, and Carolina knows that. Thomas Harley is an RFA defenseman for the Dallas Stars, a fantastic top 4 defenseman for them. He will get a contract here soon. Kirill Marchenko, an RFA for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think was first on that team in goals, if I'm not mistaken. They're going to need to resign him. He's a pivotal part to their entire rebuild. He has the potential to play on the right wing, starting the right wing of the first line, starting this next season. I wouldn't be shocked to see Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, and Kirill Marchenko first line, with how much Johnny Gaudreau loves being a playmaker, loves being able to pass the puck, getting other people into dangerous situations, and how much Sean Monahan and Kirill Marchenko are goal scorers. I think those 3 will work very well on that top line in Columbus, so we'll see what that looks like. Eli Tolvanen for the Seattle Kraken needs a new contract. He's an RFA this season. Cole Perfetti for the Winnipeg Jets, who the Winnipeg Jets might just be having the dead worst offseason of anybody, not being able to manage their prospect situation whatsoever, but hopefully they're able to re-sign Cole Perfetti, but still not giving a contract to him might be bad. Matthew Beniers needs a new contract in Seattle. I'm interested to see what that looks like, because Matthew Beniers showed a couple years ago that he's one of the best prospects in the NHL, but has been kind of teetering off a little bit. But we'll see if he's able to kind of turn around. Anton Lundell, who's coming off a cup for the Florida Panthers, needs a new contract. Dawson Mercer. Cole Sillinger needs a new contract. He's an RFA as well. You also have Joe Veleno, Jack Drury, Nick Robinson, who made it very clear that he is not going back to Toronto anymore. He is one of the more interesting RFAs to look out for. Shane Pinto from the Ottawa Senators is interesting. But I don't know if there's too many more that really catch my eye. Payne Krebs is an interesting one for the Buffalo Sabres, actually. I think he wants to re-sign in Buffalo, but I'm shocked that a deal hasn't been done because I can't imagine it being too expensive. And the Sabres look like they kind of want to win here soon. So a lot of people still out, a lot of RFAs still out to be re-signed, but those go later into the offseason, go later into July and August. But for the UFAs, kind of the house has been cleared. Kind of everybody's moved out. Everybody's found their new home. So that'll wrap it up for our fourth segment of the biggest UFAs remaining on the board. When I come back for my fifth and final segment of the night, we'll be talking winners and losers from day one of free agency. Welcome back to the fifth and final segment of the night at the GSMC Hockey Podcast. We're talking winners and losers from day one of free agency. The first team that I'm going to talk about is it's Edmonton Oilers. I think they won the day, absolutely. I think they gave short-term deals to guys that needed short-term deals, and they kept everybody low. Victor Arvidsson for 2 years, $4 million per year is a fantastic deal. Jeff Skinner, 1 year by $3 million deal is absolutely fantastic. They re-signed Connor Brown. They re-signed Corey Perry. I think they re-signed another forward that's name is escaping my head right now. And they also bring in they re-signed Matthias Janmark. That was the other name. To a term deal with only a little bit over $1 million per year. July 1st is the day that a lot of teams overspend. We might be looking at the Nashville Predators as a little bit of overspenders, but I still think that the players they got were good. But I think that I think the biggest winner from today is the Edmonton Oilers, just because July 1st is the day that everybody overspends, and they didn't overspend, and I love that. I love teams that can, understand what's burnt them in the past and move on from it and better themselves because of it. So, especially with their situation, they have two of the greatest forwards in the NHL right now that need a lot of money. Like they just warrant a lot of money. They warrant 8-figure deals, and you're already giving 12.5 to Connor McDavid, who probably deserves more than that at this point. And you're going to need to be giving somewhere around that to Leon Draisaitl. So knowing that and working extension talks with Leon Draisaitl, now they have the money to do it. We'll see when it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when with Leon, when they give him an extension. My next winner is the Florida Panthers, which is a little weird because it seems like there's a little bit of a mass exodus with the Florida Panthers, but I still think that they did pretty well. Okay. They re-signed Sam Reinhart, who is very good. They're going to give Anton Lundell some money, but they didn't lose too many pieces. They lost Oliver Ekman-Larsson, which is fine. They lost Brandon Montour, who I think got overpaid with where he went, and I think that they also lost Dmitry Kulikov. So they didn't lose too many pieces. You know, we've seen a Stanley Cup teams of the past lose a lot of pieces when they win a Stanley Cup because you just can't pay that many guys that much money. But I think for the Florida Panthers, they don't lose too many pieces. They set themselves up fantastic to go back and give it another go next year. That's why they're winners. They didn't go out and sign anybody really big or massive, but they do get Sam Reinhart back You have next winner, Nashville Predators. Yeah, I mean, you got to give them their flowers. They go out and get 3 of the biggest names in free agency. Granted, we might be looking in a few years at overpay for guys that are on the older side. Like Steven Stamkos is 38 when this contract is up, but still he's worth it. He just scored 40 goals. He's a point per game player. He's a perennial all-star. One of the best players in this entire generation. For Steven Stamkos, 4x8. I think works pretty well for him. So I think that's a right now good contract. Right now, 4 years time we'll have a conversation. But right now it's good. The Nashville Predators also signed Jonathan Marchessault to only $5 million, a little bit over $5 million per year. I think that's a good contract for them. And then Brady Shea as well, who was my number 1 defenseman on the board over Brandon Montour. I really like Brady Shea, and I think that's going to be a huge loss for the Hurricanes. The more that I talk about it, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, the more that I talk about it, the more that I realize the Carolina Hurricanes might not be that good next year. So, we'll see. But yeah, I think the Nashville Predators have done a fantastic job at bolstering a core that. I mean, Philip Forsberg, how many years in a row was it that he was like the only forward on that team? Well, now he has some people to work with, and I think that that's going to be very good for him. Philip Forsberg might score 60 next season, and I wouldn't be too shocked. All right, next team. I can't believe I'm going to say the Capitals won the day because I've been kind of hating on them this entire offseason, but I think they didn't win the day, but they are a winner from today. They got Jacob Chychrun. They got Jacob Chychrun. They also who else did they get? I know they got Jacob Chychrun in a trade. I believe they got another forward too. It's just completely escaping me now. Now I gotta look. Because that's gonna bother me if I can't figure that out. So, they got Matt Roy to a very long-term deal, which I don't know how that's gonna age, but they had the money for it. And let me tell you, I have no clue how they have the money for everything that they did today, but it's definitely a good day for them. They also get Taylor Radish to a 1x1, who's gonna be good. They re-signed Connor McMichael. Yeah, This core here in Washington, if everybody plays to how, if everybody hits their ceiling, it's a Stanley Cup contending core. However, they're banking on a lot of guys that we've seen can bottom out. We've seen Pierre-Luc Dubois not play well. Dylan Strome has never really lived up to the potential we've thought of him. Taylor Radish did not play well in Chicago last year. Jacob Chychrun did not have a good year last year. Matt Roy might not be worth what he is getting paid. And John Carlson had a bad year last year. So, they also went out and got Logan Thompson as well, who, I mean, they needed to address their goaltending need, and they did so. They did win today, but that's if everybody plays how they want them to play. And that's all we can talk about. It's the same thing with the Nashville Predators. If the guys play how we think that they can play, it's a good team and it's a good day. But if they don't, it could go south very fast, and you're paying a lot of guys a lot of money now in Washington. Next up here is the losers. The Detroit Red Wings are one of the losers. they had to dump Jake Wallman's cap, but they missed out on everybody that they were going for. They were going for Matt Roy. They were going for Eric Gustafsson. They were going for I think they were going for Sean Monahan as well. They just missed out on a lot of guys that they wanted. They didn't bolster their core as much as they wanted to as well. But I still think that their young core is good and that Yzer plan is going to work out for them. I still like the Detroit Red Wings, as their young guys are just getting another year older, and that's good for them. And they re-signed Patrick Kane, who is always going to be a plus. Next up, Dallas Stars, another loser. Just not too good. They got Ilya Lyubushkin. They got I believe Casey DeSmith as well. They extended Matt Duchene, which could just be a bad extension as well. We don't know too much on if that will work out for them. So the Dallas Stars kind of lost today. I think the biggest loser today, not too many teams had bad days, but I think the biggest loser today is Carolina Hurricanes. They lost so many pieces. That Carolina core is going to be a shell of their former self. Looking at this core now, they lose Teuvo Teravainen. They lose Jake Gensel yesterday. They're gonna lose Martin Necas. They still haven't signed Seth Jarvis. They signed Shane Gostisbehere, which I think is a bad contract. I just don't like it too much. They do extend Jakub Slavin, but that could end up being a bad contract that haunts them. I think that they really got tied with a lot of bad contracts they've given out in the past, and this is the fallout of it. I think they're still recovering from the Dmitry Orlov contract that he's still getting paid $8 million for. You have... they also got Jordan Martinook, who I think could be a good piece, but I still don't like it that much. They had a mass exodus this year, and I think that this core is going to be a shell of its former self, and I don't like it all too much. So we'll see how it turns out for the Carolina Hurricanes. I still like the pieces of Aho, Svechnikov, Kokoniemi, Evgeny Kuznetsov. I think can be good, but I don't see this team as the 100-point team that we've seen in the past. I think this team is going to regress a lot. I think it's going to... It might make the playoffs next year, but I think it's going to have a kind of Islanders-like season this upcoming season. It's not going to be the big bad Carolina Hurricanes that we're used to, which is a little bit disappointing because they really did miss their window, I think, to win a cup. Getting swept in the Eastern Conference Final 2 years ago, and then losing out to the Rangers after going down 3-0 in the second round this past season, I think will come back to haunt this franchise. I think they had a window, and the window has now closed on them. So that'll wrap it up for the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you guys all for your support. I appreciate I appreciate the interaction. I love interacting with all you guys. Love the comments. But thank you all for tuning in to the GSMC Hockey Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, remember to like and subscribe on YouTube or rate us on the whatever podcast app that you're listening to it on. And thank you for the kind words, Tim, there. But if you also enjoyed the content here, you can follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at the GSMC Sports Network. There's content and live updates there always. And thank you all once again for tuning in, and all of you guys have a fantastic and wonderful evening.
Little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to work.